Hello and good morning, people.
Oh, Arrow, you're breaking up pretty bad.
Ooh, can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Just had to crawl up on the house to move the antenna.
I know how that is.
Good morning, Scott. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. I understand you're in Charlotte, where I just was this past weekend.
Well, did you come to the Carolina Panthers game? What'd you do down here?
No, I was at the Bookmarks Festival in Winston-Salem.
Nice.
So I arrived in Charlotte and drove to Winston-Salem and then drove back. So, but I was there again on Sunday morning.
Well, I've got to ask you a local question then. Did you take 52 or did you take 40 into Winston-Salem?
I couldn't have told you. I think it was 40 though.
Okay.
I think it was 40.
For you to you create paragraphs that become, pages become books, and we get lost inside your stories. As that writer, do you also become lost inside the process of creating the stories?
And what a great question. The answer is yes, and it happens just the way you're talking about. In other words, if I have a general idea of a plot and a general idea about characters, it's when they really start coming to life in word by word on the page that I really get, sucked into this world as if by a vacuum. And it is the details and the fabric of it that's the greatest part of being a novelist.
To be that novelist, I mean, first of all, the story is about a woman in law enforcement, and to have that authority, but she's taking on things around her. That's conflict. I love writing conflict. How do you keep emotionally attached to the conflict? Because most people just want to run from it.
Oh, I mean, first of all, I went to law school.
Oh.
It was a surprise to me. I was set off in another direction. I wanted to be a writer. I was a English teacher, and that kind of conflict, the right and the wrong, and how do we find out, and how do we prove it? Those things are just like burned into my heart. I love them, and they propel me and propelled me for decades as a lawyer, and continue to propel me as a writer.
Who is Clarice in the way that she arrives inside your imagination, but when we pick up her side of the story, is it the same Clarice that you imagined?
I think so. Clarice started out as a kind of foil to her grandfather, Sandy Stern, in my last novel, The Last Trial. And she's everything that her grandfather isn't. He's precise, mannerly, punctual, analytical, and she's exactly the opposite. And yet they have a great affection for each other. But this kind of wild private investigator with a nail through her nose was very popular with readers. And I thought, well, I've seen the world from her grandfather's perspective through 11 novels now. Let me try it through Clarice's, and I had a lot of fun with Pinky, and being inside her skin. She doesn't take social cues. She comes out with stuff that is completely off the wall, but because she's such an outsider, is afraid of people basically. She often has these flashing insights, and of course, also makes ridiculous blunders. But.
Yeah, but see, aren't those the moments, though, when you're writing that you have one of those little giggle child moments? In other words, you kind of giggle going, yeah, that was a good one. I don't know where it came from, but that was a good one. I'm going to keep that one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a big thing she's missing the boat on throughout this book, but people have to keep reading to find out what it is.
Well, isn't that part of the emotional connection with the story for the reader? Because I mean, we sit there and we all draw our own opinions, and we go, oh my God, oh come on, girl.
Yeah. Of course it is, and it's those moments, Arrow, where you've got to make it plausible, where some reversal happens, and you go. instead of saying, why would she do that?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can say, I can't believe she would do that, but you know why she did it. And, and plausibility, of course, is a big part of the game for a thriller writer.
One of the hooks of the story is the fact that you write about the criminal networks in a city. We all have that, and I feel like that there are many times that I feel like that you're talking about my city, and I love the way that you do the research to really make it a part of us as well.
Yeah. Well, in this particular case, this is and it's based, frankly, on cities where I prosecuted crimes outside of Chicago, old working class towns that were decades ago run by the mafia. And there's been a sort of power vacuum ever since. And but the people who were there, their children, the ones who stayed in a life of crime, are still present. And there's a former cop named Moritz Wojcik, the Ritz, as he's called, who's turned himself into a power in real estate. But part of that is because he's figured out how to invest the rivers of illegal cash that the guys who are still involved with bust out schemes and protection rackets are still generating. And Ritz is sort of the shadow force that controls the town of Highland Isle. And Pinky, as the story goes on, eventually realizes that he's her true nemesis and the person she's going to have to face down.
In a future book, knowing what you know when it comes to the law, as that writer, because you know who did it, and we have to figure out who did it, would you ever put yourself on the stand? And because I would love to read a book one time where the author is put on the stand. What do you know? Tell me what you know, Mr. Author.
Well, sometimes the author knows less than you think, especially when she or he is starting out. So, I God willing, a little more than the reader.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was writing Presumed Innocent, I did stop because I realized I don't know what's going to happen in the rest of this book. I better figure this out before I keep writing.
Oh, Scott, you got to come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
Nero, thanks so much. I have a great time talking to you.
You be brilliant today, okay, sir?
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.